Houston, we have a problem.
What's going on, everyone? It's JERANISM back with another video for you today. Wanted to talk quickly about two things. First is circumnavigation, and second will be kind of a moment of zen. Two images and a moment of reflection. But first, let's get to circumnavigation. As we've been taught, the current model of the Earth is that of a sphere, or something close to it, with a circumference of 24,901 miles. And we all know, and some have done it themselves personally, that you can circumnavigate the globe going east or west. That works on a globe, and it also works on a flat Earth. What is interesting on the flat model, however, is that the same is true, but the southern hemisphere is much larger. Not the same as its northern counterpart. So, if the Earth was flat, there would be signs to show us that the flat model better represented reality. Like in the southern summer. In a heliocentric world, the sun is 3 million miles closer during the southern summer than it is during the northern summer. So, most, if not all, of the Earth's highest temperatures would be in the south. However, that's not the case. In fact, 14 of 15 of the highest temperatures are in the north. Well, if you look carefully, that actually works on a flat model much better. The flat model would also call for a much colder and harsh environment in the south. The globe calls for 70 degrees south and 70 degrees north to be really identical, yet they are completely and vastly different. And the flat model would also show a larger than currently understood southern sea. You can see here that the southern hemisphere is much larger. Now, does this match our observations, or does the globe? Go to any flight tracker and watch southern flights, and as soon as they are 200 miles offshore, poof, they're gone. You won't see them again until they're within 200 miles from another landmass. So with a larger than expected southern hemisphere, we should expect to see some evidence that the distance traveled below the equator is a lot larger than the globe predicts. So let's have a look. So taking a look at this image and the green line, you should be able to see that the circumnavigation east-west should be less than 25,000 miles. Granted, there could be some added miles here or there, so let's say 35,000 at the most. So let's begin with Magellan. And of course he died and his logs are lost, and of course even the backup logs are no longer in existence. The closest we have is Antonio Pigafetta's account and a logbook by Francisco Albo. Now, in his very own log, Pigafetta points out that the circumference of Earth is 6,300 leagues. Then he says that a league is 4 miles. So 6,300 times 4 is 25,200. That's within a few hundred of the current measurement of 24,901. Now, I'm sure you've heard people say that Eratosthenes discovered the circumference of the Earth back in 250 BC. He was a very smart man, they say. Take yourself back 2,000 years, 2,500 years, and look at these pictures and tell me how smart of a man he would have had to be to come to the conclusion that the sun rays are parallel. I don't think there's any possible way that anybody would come to that conclusion in 250 BC. Now, it is difficult to know what has been rewritten and what hasn't in some of these logs, but let's read this entry from the Pigafetta journal. It says, "The Earth is round," he says, "and remains suspended and immovable in the midst of all celestial bodies. The first index fixed the two poles, the Arctic and the Antarctic, which are supposed to correspond with the poles of the Earth. It is supposed that all the circumference of the Earth is divided into 360 degrees, and each degree is 17 leagues and a half. Consequently, the entire circumference of the Earth is 6,300 leagues." So somehow in 1525 they knew where Antarctica and the Arctic were, the North and the South Pole. 1525?
This is crazy!
Yeah, I'd say that. Let's move on. So we've got here, how many miles did Ferdinand Magellan travel? And it says he traveled 14,460 leagues, which they equate here to 43,400 miles. So we look a little bit further and see another article here that also says the same thing, that they had run more than 14,460 leagues. The next document here as well says the same number yet again, 14,460 Spanish leagues. It lists that as 37,560 miles. So far we've been told 37,560. We've been told 43,400. But if we just look at Pigafetta's own writing, where he says that land leagues are of 3 miles and sea leagues are of 4 miles. So that gives us 1460 times 4 is 57,840 miles. Yet we've seen other articles try and tell us 37, 47. It's actually 57,000 miles. Now when you look at the logbooks of Captain Cook, his logbook for his second journey was also 60,000 plus miles. You could look at the British Challenger expedition in the 1800s. That was also over 60,000 miles. So we should start being able to recognize a pattern here that obviously when we circumnavigate south of the equator, we are logging way too many miles. Remember that they're at the bottom of the globe. So if the equator is 25,000 miles, how are Captain Cook, Magellan, and others doing 50 to 65,000 miles, which is more than double? And of course, the key here is the circumnavigation. But not east-west. Let's look at north-south. So on a globe, we know how easy it would be to simply do a north-south circumnavigation going over both poles. It should be as easy as going east-west. So we either will have a ton of north-south circumnavigations, or we will have a few weird stories and trips, and maybe some failed attempts, because on a flat Earth map, north-south circumnavigation is impossible. So again, if we live on a globe, we should be seeing a lot of north-south navigations, circumnavigations, and if we live on a flat Earth, we would see a lot of things like this picture shows. Imagine you start at that white dot there somewhere on the east coast of the United States and travel down to the tip of South America. You would then travel from there out to wherever the 90-degree marker was, and you'd have to turn around and come back. You see that line coming right back to the Mexico area, and then up to the North Pole, and then ending back where you started. Alright, so should we expect to see no claims for north-south navigation? Well, remember, it is a deception. So we're going to have to dig a bit deeper. They don't just hand you the truth. They are happy to teach you lies in public schools and show you propaganda and TV and newspapers. But for truth, we're going to have to actually step out of our comfort zone. So let's look at some recent claims. First, we have the Guinness record holder and the Guinness Greatest Living Explorer, Sir Ranulph Fiennes. He goes by the name of Ran. One of the things he did was a 3-year trip to circumnavigate the Earth north-south. And are we dealing with some just regular guy? Or are we dealing with Sir Ranulph Twistleton Wexara Fiennes, the 3rd Baronet OBE? He was in the British Army for 8 years. He inherited his father's baronetcy, whatever the hell that means. Some ridiculous nonsense, I'm sure. He's also cousins to Queen Elizabeth. So you don't have to look too far to see what kind of guy we are dealing with here. And a recent Telegraph article tells us that Sir Ranulph was in court recently because he was accused by Natalie Harrison of faking injuries to make his expedition seem more risky and exciting. And Natalie, she actually got hurt the second time she fell into a crevice on purpose. And you see him here with a ladder. I don't know who's carrying that for him while he's on these little journeys. But, oh, by the way, since Harrison agreed to go along with the 2 fake stunts, she got 0. In fact, she was ordered to pay Sir Ranulph Fakes-A-Lot $50,000 to pay for his lawyer fees, because the judge actually said that it was her choice to go ahead and agree with his idea of faking accidents. He is, of course, a Freemason, a member of the Belvedere Lodge number 503. Of course, it runs in the family. But now let's take a look at this 1979 to 1982 Trans-Globe Expedition, the North-South Pole Circumnavigation. Yeah, right.
No one has ever done that! No one has ever done that in the history of Dota!
So let's take a look if there's any discrepancies that might lead us to believe that maybe this is some, I don't know, horseshit. It looks like 52,000 miles, it says here, in total was covered during this Trans-Globe Expedition. Again, north-south navigation, 25,000 mile circumference, yet 52,000 mile trip. And we can note that it says it was such a huge challenge, no one has ever repeated the route. So now let's look at the Guinness Book of Fakery. According to this, we've got 35,000 miles. Okay, well, that's a little different. And this is the Guinness Book of World Records page. This is the Trans-Globe ship that actually he used to travel up and down the globe, I guess. They also had an interesting apparatus here. This is the Trans-Globe Expedition, the plane. So even though they're supposed to be doing surface navigation, who knows what they actually did. Let's see here. This is the actual homepage for Saran, the expedition. Oh, now it's a 100,000-mile route.
You lie to me. You make an excuse.
So they've now jumped from 35 to 52 to 100,000 miles, all talking about the exact same trip. I mean, the question is, how can you be off by 70,000 miles? That's like 3 times around the globe. Can we not figure out how many miles we went on a trip? It's not that hard. Oh boy.